So what's happening is not that people on a whole plant food SOS-free diet don't age. It's just they age more slowly, like you're supposed to age.
Yeah.
Instead of being rapidly aged, so that you find yourself unable to talk or move along in some nursing home bed waiting for people to change your diaper the last 10 or 20 years of your life.
I'm at the TrueNorth Health Center in Santa Rosa, and I'm here with Dr. Goldhamer, who is the founder of TrueNorth. Dr. Goldhamer, you started TrueNorth in 1984, and you have gained a lot of expertise in water-only fasting. Can you tell us a little bit about what TrueNorth is and what you've done here over the last 34 years?
Sure. Well, TrueNorth is an integrated medical facility. We have doctors of medicine, chiropractic, osteopathy, naturopathy, psychology working together in an integrated fashion. Our 60-bed facility allows us to have patients stay with us to undergo medically supervised water-only fasting. We've done that with 16,000 people over the last 34 years. And we've had a chance to see just how good the body is at healing itself if you basically get out of the way and let it do its thing.
All right.
So in our facility, patients, we review their medical history, we do an exam, we monitor them carefully during their stay. We utilize a whole plant food SOS-free diet, as well as encourage people to exercise, sleep appropriately, and give the body a chance to really heal itself. It's what the naturopaths call first-level therapeutic order intervention, really dealing with the basic reasons why people are sick to begin with and trying to undo those things.
Okay. And then how does water fasting work exactly?
Well, that's one of the really big questions we're trying to answer through our nonprofit foundation's research work. There's a number of mechanisms which fasting seems to be effective. Number one is that if you think about the conditions that people are getting sick from, high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, these are conditions of dietary excess. They're intimately tied with consumption of too much, often of poor food quality choices. And so it's not surprising that fasting would give the body a chance to unwind the consequence of dietary excess. And it does. It rapidly mobilizes and eliminates those accumulated intermediary products of metabolism. So you get kind of a detox effect. You get weight loss. You eliminate the excess salt from the system. And when the salt goes down, the blood volume goes down, the blood pressure comes down, the non-healing wounds start to heal. You reduce inflammation in general, which has a powerful effect on particularly autoimmune-related conditions. So your ulcerative colitis, your ankylosing spondylitis, the asthma, the eczema, the psoriasis, these conditions all tend to respond as inflammation goes down. There's also a number of other mechanisms that we're investigating that happen in fasting that are rather unique to fasting. So when you put the body in this fasting state, there's a huge physiological adaptation that occurs. Many of those changes appear to be associated with healing. For example, a lot of people have what's termed gut leakage. They have an inflammation of the intestinal mucosa, absorbing proteins into their bloodstream that stimulate the immune system. And in genetically vulnerable people, they get significant problems, whether it be ulcerative colitis or related conditions. Well, in fasting, the body gets a chance to kind of heal that. Inflammation goes down, the gut leakage resolves, and then if you follow with a really carefully controlled diet, you can often manage those conditions without having to resort to the powerful medications that are so devastating.
All right, and you just mentioned the diet. What does the diet look like then? Well,
it's a whole plant food diet that's free of the chemicals added to food that make people fat, sick, and miserable. So we eliminate what's called SOS, the International Symbol of Danger. It also stands for salt, oil, and sugar. These are chemicals that are not actually food, but highly concentrated food byproducts that are put into food to stimulate the dopamine cascade in our brain, induce pleasure, but they lead us to systematically overeating. That's why people are so many difficulties with being overweight and dealing with these diseases of dietary excess.
All right, okay. So you take too much calories also?
Yeah, they take too much calories. You can't almost help it because your brain is telling you that a little is good, a lot is more, keep eating.
Yeah, all right, okay. I just finished my 14-day water fast, and so I can say that I felt sometimes very good, sometimes very miserable, sometimes very weak. So are there symptoms coming up during a water fast? Should you do it alone at home? I read a lot of online before I came here, and a lot of people recommend doing that alone for 14 days, for 3 weeks. Are there any risks?
Yeah, I think that fasting is best done in a controlled setting where there's been a good history, exam, proper daily monitoring, appropriate laboratory testing, and then you can ensure that's more likely to be a safe and effective experience. I think there's also a benefit in inpatient setting. You're able to get kind of an intense educational overview, which I think helps with long-term compliance. And it avoids a lot of the mistakes where people can't tell the difference between a healing crisis and an actual problem. And so that, from a safety and efficiency standpoint, I think fasting in a controlled setting has some advantages. But fasting can be an intense and miserable experience, particularly if people don't prepare properly for it. So by getting people to eat a whole plant foods diet free of coffee and alcohol and all these other stimulating drugs prior to fasting, usually the fast doesn't have to be quite as intense. If people rest properly, they can avoid stimulating gluconeogenesis, which is the breakdown of protein, in order to sustain their glucose needs. And that allows the body to conserve its protein reserves, focus on burning fat stores and eliminating the toxins associated with that. So the mistakes people make is not having baseline data. Without baseline data, it's hard to tell the difference between a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
They make a mistake because they're too active in fasting, because they, oftentimes they're feeling okay, and the more active are they, better they feel. And that may not be because they're getting better, maybe because when you stimulate the body, you slow down the detoxification. So we don't really care if people feel good, we care if they get good. And so we want people to rest, even though, yes, if they exercised and ran around, they might feel better, but not for the right reasons.
Okay. So you shouldn't work, you should rest and...
Yeah.
All right, okay.
And if people can't do that, then we would recommend them using intermittent fasting or modified feeding regimes. They're slower, they're safer, but they can do those and still maintain normal activities. Whereas water-only fasting is the one time where it really should be done in a controlled setting with rest.
Okay, cool. What about when we're talking about fasting? There's the other way that people go on a ketogenic diet at the moment. Also, you go also into ketosis.
Yes. So they're trying to do what's called fasting mimicking diets. They're trying to mimic the benefits of fasting, but without actually having to do the fasting. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work as well to do mimicking diets as it does to actually do fasting. However, where people limit their feeding windows, perhaps to say an 8-hour feeding window and get a 16-hour fast every night, or maybe they reduce their calories to 600 calories 1 or 2 days a week to try to facilitate rest. These can be useful tools. They're not the same as fasting. In some ways, they may be better because, they can be done without supervision. They can be done on their own. They can be done with less significant side effects. The downside is they're not quite as effective or efficient as actually doing the fasting. And so for people that aren't able to fast or maybe aren't appropriate candidates for fasting, intermittent fasting can be incredibly helpful. For people that need medically supervised fasting, there's nothing that's exactly the same as that.
All right, okay. But if I understood it correctly, you should do the intermittent fasting or even the ketogenic fasting on a SOS-free vegan diet, and not on a
right. We'd recommend
diet with meat and
not using the
eggs.
dead Dr. Atkins diet. May his fillet of soul rest in peace. No, we wouldn't recommend that. But there are ways that people, for example, Dr. Mercola advocates the use of a high vegetable fat diet with low carbohydrate, trying to induce fasting mimicking effects. One thing that happens with fasting mimicking diets is you're in ketosis, and ketosis, like in real fasting, has a hunger blunting effect. So some people are using it to try to facilitate weight loss. The other thing that they're trying to do is overcome the insulin and blood sugar vacillations that sometimes are associated with cravings. And all of that may be true. However, it turns out if you go on a whole plant food SOS-free diet, you also can normalize blood glucose and insulin vacillations, and you can also, get those benefits. It just takes a little time. It's a little bit more difficult because you live in a world that's designed to make you fat, sick, and miserable. So people don't like giving up their addictions. And so if somebody tells you, well, look, you can lose weight, but still keep eating pork rinds, and you can still have cheese, and you can, that sounds very appealing to them. It may not be real in terms of improving their health, but, it sells a lot of books, and, it's what people want to hear.
You would offer water fasting and you offer juice fasting. So what is the difference between them?
Well, water fasting is fasting. What we also do for people that aren't able to fast for whatever reason is we offer a different approach, essentially modified fasting, 600 calories of fresh vegetable or fruit and vegetable-based juices, or a healthy eating regime, fruits, vegetables, steamed vegetables. So if you reduce total calories, you facilitate weight loss, and you facilitate this, modified fasting type of approach, which slowly but surely moves people in the right direction. And for some people, that's appropriate. Water fasting would be too vigorous. And so what we try to do is, get them to the point where they would be capable of undergoing that type of more vigorous process. Fasting certainly not for everybody.
All right, okay. And could you heal your body also just on a whole food plant-based SOS-free diet?
Absolutely. In fact, most conditions, if you're patient enough and do it diligently enough, will resolve whether you fast or you don't fast. The thing about fasting is it can make it possible to get people to do that diet. Taste and orientation, for example, their tastes change. At first, healthy food may be disgusting, tasteless slime. They couldn't possibly choke it down.
Yeah.
After fasting, good food starts to taste good. And so as a consequence, people are more willing to comply.
Yeah.
It's also why juice fasts are sometimes more helpful than just a healthy eating program at first, because it's processed and it tastes sweet, people are willing to drink it. Whereas they wouldn't want to eat the salad and the fruit necessarily at first because they're so addicted to the pleasure trap. So it's a way of breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
And that can be very helpful to some people.
All right. And what about SOS-free? So no salt, no oil, no sugar. Why no oil? Because there's olive oil, there's coconut oil, and a lot of...
Yeah, especially olive and coconut oil, which a lot of people say is wonderful. They tell you dark chocolate's wonderful and red wine's wonderful. And
exactly.
Some people will try to tell you cocaine's wonderful too. But the bottom line is that oil is a highly processed fractionated food product with 9 calories per gram. It's artificially stimulates dopamine in the brain, as does sugar, as do these other chemicals, and it tends to lead to overeating and development of obesity and the disease of dietary excess. Whereas you do need fats in your diet, and they're found inside fruits and vegetables. So on our diet, about 15 to 18% of calories are coming from fat, but they're coming from the fat that's found in fruits and vegetables and perhaps richer foods like avocado, nuts, and seeds, etc., that happen to be very abundant in fats, including essential fatty acids. So there's no shortage of getting enough fat, just like you don't need to eat sugar in order to get enough carbohydrate in your diet. You can get it from your fruits and vegetables, and you don't need to eat salt because it turns out that vegetables particularly are rich in sodium, and so there's no problem getting enough sugar, oil, or salt in your diet without eating these highly fractionated processed chemicals that, even though they're commonly used and we've come to think of them as, quote, health food, they're not healthy at all.
Okay. And with nuts and avocados, can you overdo it?
You can, and because these are very rich foods, those are the few foods that we portion control. So we recommend people in general not eating more than about an ounce a day.
Okay.
Nuts or seeds, a small handful.
Yeah.
It is possible to overeat, even on these whole natural foods. So that's why we recommend people eat large amounts of salad and steamed vegetables, which are high in nutrition but low in caloric density. And that way, by the time you get to the more concentrated food, there's really not that much room left.
Yeah, all right, okay. I have just a short explanation. I have an SOS-free Instagram and Facebook page, and I ask my followers if they have any questions, and a few came up, and one was, there is any knowledge about long-term effects on the hormone or adrenaline system? The fasting.
Well, that's a very good question, and it's one that we are investigating right now as part of our research efforts from the TrueNorth Health Foundation. The theory is, we see clinically that there's a profound effect on things like fibrocystic breast disease, dysmenorrhea, uterine fibroid, tumor formation, menorrhagia, etc. And so the theory is that perhaps something's affecting the estradiol conversion systems, which happens by the microflora in the gut and in the liver. And it may be that because estradiol isn't always efficiently converted to estriol for excretion, estradiol builds up, and elevated estradiol sometimes is associated with these symptoms. And after fasting, those symptoms definitely are being eliminated. Maybe that's the mechanism by which this is happening. We don't know for sure yet because that research is still underway.
Okay, cool, thank you. Many people in the natural hygiene arena don't use garlic or onion.
Yes. So these spices in general are appetite stimulants, and so there's some concern that if you get too involved with spices, it may stimulate a little bit more overeating than what happened if you ate foods more plain and whole. If you just ate your fill of rice, you eat a certain amount, but you spice it up enough, and particularly if you add salt, you will, on average, eat more before you reach satiety.
Yeah.
And so that's what they talk about. Salt in particular stimulates passive overeating, and it's why salt actually can be, even though it has no calories, may be an important part of resolving obesity, is by eliminating this excess stimulation of the diet. Now, I think spices are less of a concern. However, for some people, especially when weight control is an issue, keeping foods real mild may be a benefit. And there are some people who have very sensitive digestive systems that don't tolerate the chemicals associated with spicy foods, and so they're better off abstaining. We don't restrict herbs and spices in general, other than those general precautions, don't get too carried away, and particularly if you're noticing having trouble with quantity control. Maybe it'll be easier to keep the foods very, very simple.
All right, but it's with spices, but not with herbs, or is it the same with herbs?
Well, herbs and spices, are all plant-based derivative foods. They're generally well tolerated by most people.
Okay. And your thoughts on balsamic vinegar?
Yeah, there's some concerns about, vinegar in general is a highly acidic food. Some people don't tolerate it too well, but most people, again, can tolerate it, whether it's apple cider or rice vinegar. Some balsamic vinegar is found to have a higher lead concentration, I think probably how it's processed or how it's fermented or whatever. But, in general, these food products for healthy people that don't have digestive sensibilities, whatever, generally are well tolerated.
Alright, and I can drink apple cider vinegar in the morning, a bit of apple cider vinegar with water.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the therapeutic attributes attributed to drinking are actually real, but certainly there are people that believe that.
Yeah.
I don't see any great harm for most people. I don't get too worried about whether you want to have some balsamic vinegar. You don't. But on this diet, I don't think you have to artificially try to modulate the pH by drinking vinegar or something. I think you can achieve a normal balance just through a whole natural food diet, a normal microbiome in the gut, which is also one of the things we think happens with fasting. Yeah. And if you think about it, you have 5 pounds of bacteria living in your gut right now.
Okay.
And they're breathing and eating and pooing inside you right now. So you want the bacteria in your gut, that 5 pounds of bacteria, to be pooing fertilizer, not toxic waste.
Yeah.
So you want to feed it soluble fiber because that's the diet that allows the microbiome to flourish and thrive. You feed it meat, and then you get products like TMA, which becomes TMAO, which is a highly toxic trimethylamine oxidase irritating substance that may be contributing to heart disease, cancer, other problems. So what we feed our bacteria may be an important part of why people in a whole plant food SOS-free diet do so much better. Not just eliminating the toxicity from the accumulated biologically concentrated dead decaying flesh stuff, but also the benefit that comes from eating these carbohydrate-rich soluble fiber foods.
Okay. You can buy drinks with probiotics. And then, I forgot the name.
Yeah, there are a lot of products out there, kombucha and different types of stuff.
Kombucha, yeah.
I'm not a big fan of things, particularly things that contain stimulants, ephedra, caffeine, et cetera, et cetera. So mostly what happens is you get some beneficial aspect of food, and then somebody tries to make it into a processed product and sell it for a bunch of money.
Okay.
So they'll tell you, ooh, you should drink red wine. It's got a powerful antioxidant in it. And that happens to come from the grape skin. So I would suggest probably what you'd want to do is eat the grapes. But of course you can't make as much money selling people grapes as you can fermenting it out and putting it in a bottle and charging money for it. So
that's true, yeah. Right. What about using oil like argan oil or coconut oil for the skin?
Well, if you're going to apply it on your skin, there's going to be minimal absorption, so I'm not as concerned about external emollients, although I would suggest that people adopt these diets find they need less external emollients because they're actually maintaining normal skin health.
Okay.
So it becomes less of an issue, but I certainly don't object if somebody finds that using an external moisturizer helps them. That's
all right, okay. And how does it work? Because people who are on a whole food plant-based diet, you can't tell the age anymore because they don't age anymore?
Well, they do age. They just age normally.
Oh.
And so what happens is that it's like if you look at two people and one is a smoker and the other's not a smoker, you can usually tell who's the smoker because they get smoker's face. Yeah. They get that premature wrinkling look that comes from the cross-linkage of collagen tissues that happens from the free radicals in smoking cigarettes. So they prematurely age their face. Of course, it's not just their face they're aging, it's their entire body. It's why 80% of smokers never get lung cancer because they die of heart disease before they live long enough to grow their tumors. So bottom line is free radicals come not just from smoking, they also come from drinking alcohol, peroxidation of alcohol. That's why people that drink alcohol get fatty liver. They get this scar tissue in their liver damaging from the toxic effect of alcohol. Or that eat fried foods and highly processed sugary crap that everybody's trying to live on nowadays. So what's happening is not that people on a whole plant food SOS-free diet don't age. It's just they age more slowly, like you're supposed to age.
Yeah.
Instead of being rapidly aged, so that you find yourself unable to talk or move along in some nursing home bed waiting for people to change your diaper the last 10 or 20 years of your life.
So you can reverse that.
I think you can slow the progression of aging back to its normal level by stopping doing the things that cause people to age prematurely, which is smoking, drinking, eating meat, and highly processed fractionated foods. And then if you get really radical and engage in things like getting enough sleep, exercising appropriately, and managing your stress effectively, then you can live a long and healthy life, and you get to live until you die. And you don't find yourself debilitated for the last years or decades of your life, or certainly less likely.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds very good. What about raw diets?
Yeah, well, we do advocate raw fruits and vegetables as a big bulk of the diet. In fact, the majority of your diet by volume will likely be raw fruits and vegetables. But if you try to live exclusively on raw fruits and vegetables, what you find is those diets tend to be high-fat, high-sugar diets because they have to be rich in nuts and fruits and dried fruits. And so that doesn't work as well long-term as a whole plant food SOS-free diet where you get lots of raw fruits and vegetables and enough steamed and starchy vegetables to meet your caloric needs. People that go on raw food diets either tend to overeat on the high fruit, high sugar, high fat content, or they get really thin and then they start developing depletion issues where their teeth, nail, hair, immunological suppression, they get some long-term problems. It takes a while because you can do nothing but raw fruits and vegetables for a couple of years till you deplete your reserves. And there are some people that are, if they're very diligent, they eat enough vegetable material, they can function fairly well. But most people find if they include heat to process vegetable material, which is we've been doing for 500,000 years as humans at least, you can get the caloric density you need without having to overeat on the high sugar, high fat foods, and that actually works better.
Yeah, it sounds better. All right, and just one more last question. What about if I want to do a water fast and I'm on medication?
Well, it's important that, with the exception of a few exceptions, sometimes thyroid medication, hormone replacement therapies can sometimes be modulated. It's important that medications be safely and appropriately withdrawn prior to fasting. So you wouldn't fast on medications. In fact, some medications would be very dangerous. And you have to be careful, though, because many medications you can't just arbitrarily discontinue. Once your body's dependent or addicted to these medications, you have to withdraw those medications appropriately. So you have to work with a physician that's not an idiot in order to be able to get off the drug safely. Then once you're off the medications and stable, then you can consider whether fasting is appropriate.
All right. So if you want to do it at home, do it carefully, do it only for a few days. And if you take medication, talk to your physician.
Well, I wouldn't recommend water fasting on your own. I would recommend water fasting be done always in conjunction with a doctor that has reviewed your history, done an exam, and established baseline data and is prepared to advise you through the issues. It's not the whether you're home or not that's the big issue. It's how the fast is going to be conducted, whether the information is necessary there. If people are interested in whether they're a candidate for fasting, one of the services that we offer is they can go onto our website at healthpromoting.com, complete the registration forms, and we offer a no-cost phone conversation where I'll actually talk to people about whether they're a good candidate for fasting, and if so, if we aren't able to help them, maybe we can direct them to places closer to them that might have doctors that are experienced and trained in doing that.
That sounds very good.
So that's something that they can do if they want to get more information on that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the interview.
Excellent.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Dr. Alan Goldhamer. If you're interested in water-only fasting, choose fasting, a healthy lifestyle, or you're on medication and want to get rid of that, you can contact TrueNorth via their website www.healthpromoting.com. If you want to have more information about the pleasure trap, how the food system works, what intake the food has in our body, or if you're hungry all the time and can't lose weight and wonder why that is and how you can change that, or if you just want to change your lifestyle to a whole plant-based SOS-free one, you can buy the pleasure trap. There's a lot of information about that in this book. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.